In the ancient lands where the earth whispered secrets to the sky, a voice of fire was born. His name was Elijah, a prophet whose heart burned with a devotion as fierce as the desert sun. He was a man cloaked in camel's hair, his words a storm that shook kingdoms and turned hearts back to the one true God. But this is not just a story of a prophet. It is the story of faith itself, tested in the crucible of a world that had forgotten its creator. The kingdom of Israel had fallen into shadow, led by King Ahab and his queen, Jezebel, who bowed to the silent idol of Baal. The rains ceased, the rivers dried up, and a great famine gripped the land, a mirror of the spiritual drought in the people's souls. In this desolate landscape, Elijah stood alone. He was a solitary flame against the encroaching darkness. He spoke the word of God, declaring that no rain would fall until the people turned from their idols. For 3.5 years, the sky was a barren canvas, and the earth cracked with thirst. Elijah, sustained by divine will, was hidden away by the brook Cherith, where ravens brought him bread and meat, a testament that even in the deepest solitude, faith is never truly abandoned. But faith is not meant to be hidden. It is a light that must be shown. The time came for a confrontation, a moment when heaven and earth would hold their breath. Elijah returned from the wilderness and stood before King Ahab, his voice echoing with the authority of the divine. "How long will you waver between two opinions?" He cried out to the people gathered on Mount Carmel, "If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." The challenge was set. 2 altars were built, one for Baal and one for the Lord. The prophets of Baal, 450 of them, danced and cried out from morning until noon, begging their God to send fire. But there was no voice, no answer, no one who paid attention. The silence of their idol was deafening, a hollow echo in the vast emptiness. Their frenzy grew, but the sky remained silent, indifferent to their pleas. Then, as the sun began its descent, Elijah stepped forward. His movements were calm, deliberate. He rebuilt the broken altar of the Lord with 12 stones, representing the 12 tribes of Israel. He dug a trench around it and had the people pour water over the offering and the wood. Not once, but 3 times until the water filled the trench. There was no room for doubt, no space for human trickery. This was to be a sign for all to see. And then Elijah prayed. It was not a shout of desperation, but a quiet, powerful plea, a conversation with the Creator of the universe. "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel," he said, his voice carrying on the still air, "let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." In that instant, the fire of the Lord fell from the heavens. It did not simply light the wood. It consumed everything, the offering, the wood, the stones, the soil, and even the water in the trench. A collective gasp rose from the crowd, a wave of awe and terror. They fell on their faces, their voices a single, unified cry. "The Lord, He is God! The Lord, He is God!" A spiritual famine was broken. The hearts of the people, once barren, were now fertile ground for faith to be replanted. And as if in response to their renewed hearts, a small cloud, the size of a man's hand, appeared over the sea. Soon, the sky grew black with clouds and wind, and a heavy rain fell upon the parched land, washing it clean. It was a baptism for the earth and for the soul of a nation, but the battle was not over. Victory often awakens the fiercest opposition. Queen Jezebel, enraged, swore to end Elijah's life. And here, the story takes a turn, revealing the fragile humanity within the mighty prophet. The man who had commanded fire from the sky, who had faced down an entire kingdom, now fled for his life. He ran into the wilderness, exhausted and despairing. Under a solitary broom tree, he prayed for his life to end. "I have had enough, Lord," he whispered. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." In this moment of profound despair, when the fire in his own heart seemed to dwindle to a flicker, God did not answer with a whirlwind or a blaze. Instead, An angel touched him gently, providing him with food and water. "Get up and eat," a voice said, "for the journey is too much for you." Strengthened, Elijah traveled for 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God, the very place where the law was given. He found shelter in a cave, a womb of stone, waiting. God's voice came to him, not in the storm, but in the silence that follows. "What are you doing here, Elijah?" The prophet poured out his heart, his loneliness, his feeling of failure. Then God commanded him to stand on the mountain. A great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. In that still small voice, Elijah found his answer. He learned that God's power is not always in the dramatic and the spectacular. It is in the quiet, the steadfast, the persistent presence that endures when all else has fallen away. It is the voice that speaks not to the crowd, but to the individual heart. It is the strength found not in victory, but in vulnerability. God revealed that Elijah was not alone. There were 7,000 others in Israel whose faith remained true. Elijah's journey teaches us that faith is not a single triumphant moment on a mountaintop. It is a long pilgrimage through valleys of despair and deserts of doubt. It is about finding the courage to stand when you feel alone and the humility to listen when you feel lost. It is about understanding that even the strongest among us can feel broken, and that in our deepest weakness, a divine strength can be found, not in the roar of the flame, but in the gentle whisper that promises, "You are not alone." The fire on Mount Carmel was a spectacle for the world, but the whisper in the cave was a rebirth for the soul. It reminds us that our own moments of doubt do not signify the end of our faith. They are invitations to listen more closely, to seek God not only in the grand displays of power, but in the quiet, steady presence that sustains us through our longest nights. Elijah's story is a timeless echo, reminding every generation that even when our own fire seems to burn out, a divine spark remains, ready to be rekindled by a single, gentle whisper. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to God Story Reborn for more tales of faith and rebirth. May you find strength in the silence and hope in the whisper.